No, don't do it!
Alright class, welcome back to FPL School by your boy, Bacon Boy. And this is episode 9, top 10 tips to become a top FPL manager. Tip number 1, plan ahead. What's the plan, Batman? Huh? Tell me, what are you doing next, boy? Where having a plan in FPL can be the difference between an okay season and a great season. Ooh. But what do we actually mean when we say plan ahead? This could mean knowing how long you want to keep a specific player for, such as only wanting to own a Villa attacker for game week 1 to 3, as after that they have terrible fixtures. It could also mean buying players for your bench to bench boost in a few weeks. It could mean knowing you're going to buy a Man City player in game week 2 just for your captaincy. It could mean you know you want to transfer in a Wolves or Arsenal player in soon as they have great fixtures after game week 4. And it could also mean you know you're going to wildcard early, so you only need to look at the early games. All things you get from planning ahead, which basically means just have a look and always keep updated on the fixtures of not just your team, but the fixtures going on in the league as well, and what teams have the best fixtures. So you know not only when to sell your players when they have bad fixtures, but also you know who to get in as well, or who has great fixtures too. You can do all of this by using a bunch of free tools and resources, or just going through your team and just looking at the fixtures really. This isn't to say you have to have a concrete plan, like you must do this in game week 2, you must do this in game week 3. No, you do not have to figure all of that out, but it is more to say just make sure you are prepared for the worst and you know what to do in any situation, as you don't want to triple up on a team and then realise next week they have terrible fixtures. So you are now a Batman with a plan. We're hey, lovely. Tip number 2, don't act off emotion. Bringing in a player just to captain and then he goes and becomes an absolute blanker and doesn't get you any points can be one of the most frustrating things in the world. But if you go and rage transfer them straight out, you're doing FPL wrong. Not every player will get points every game, and not every FPL decision you make will get you FPL points straight away. So it is never worth rage transferring out a player and acting off emotion straight after a game, as you never know the mess the rest of your team is going to be at the end of the week, so you might not want to make a specific transfer. Where to reiterate that point, you might also want to have a plan, and part of your plan was to keep this player for a few weeks. But just because you're angry with him now, you want to chuck him in the bin immediately. But no, don't do that. Let your head cool off, come back to your team when there's no longer steam coming out of your ears, and you should be able to make a much better decision. Tip number 3, show your team to other people. This may be to a family or friend that plays FPL, or it could be on any of the highly engaged social media platforms, including Reddit or the even better FPL Twitter. That's not to say actually listen and change your team with every single comment you receive, right? You should still make your own decisions for your team, but it is good to get the conversation rolling. Someone might have a bit more insight on a certain player or a certain way the team's going to play, or you might actually just be able to convince yourself why someone's such a good option when you're trying to explain your own choices to someone else. But if you do have an extra pair of eyes, it could help you not make any silly mistakes or just reassure yourself and your players. Both are completely fine and both can help you become a better at FPL. Tip number 4, focus on captaincy. Captaincy is one of the most important things in FPL if you want to do well. But you don't want to be going into the next week not knowing who you're going to captain, and then have to do a last minute transfer, all the hits incoming, just to bring someone good in. So this could tie into tip number 1 as well, of plan ahead, as you should also plan your captaincies ahead as well. I would always suggest trying to get in a clear captain and vice captain weeks in advance, as sometimes you can have one ready, you know who you're going to captain, but then just before they could get injured or start looking very bad, you don't want to captain them anymore. So make sure you look ahead and prioritise transfers and players in if it means having a much better captaincy option. As if you captain and double that massive 15 plus point haul, or that's all of the points for you, loving it. Tip number 5, watch football. Now this one is maybe a bit more of an opinion, right? As you can do very well in FPL without watching football. But what I really mean by this is watch and understand the players you have, or the players you want to be getting in. As if you have no idea how they play, then yeah, it's quite hard to predict how they're going to do. You might actually be looking to buy a new defender, and see Everton just kept 2 clean sheets in a row. So you might want to get one of their players in. But if you had actually watched the games, you might have realised that they almost conceded multiple times in both games, and their defence does not look that solid at all. Sometimes we get blindsided by actual goals, assists and clean sheets, which, they are what the FPL points are, but sometimes some of them can be a complete fluke, and someone getting goals and assists before does not always mean they're going to get more very soon. So when considering a player, I would always suggest just watching them play. It doesn't have to be in their next live game or watching an entire game, right? It could just be previous highlights on YouTube, or maybe just goal compilations of a certain striker. As if you understand the way they play and how they are involved in games, it can sometimes give you a much better read into if they can keep doing well or keep doing what they've been doing. As any player can score in a one-off game, but if you understand how they are involved and how they play, then you can make some better decisions. Tip number 6, be open-minded. FPL is a game which no one has managed to crack down to an exact strategy, right? Some people might play a similar way every year and always do well, but there is not just one way of playing, right? Two completely contrasting strategies could still have the same results. Someone could even win FPL one year, follow the exact same pattern the year after, and do absolutely terrible. That's because FPL is a very dynamically changing game, right? Where one year it might favour one way of playing and another year it might not. So the very best thing to do about that is just be open-minded. Not just about your team structure, your approach and your strategy, but the players you get in as well. No one ever thought that Leicester could do what they did in that one season and won it, and what absolute gems they provided. No one thought Lingard could manage to keep scoring last year, and he just kept on doing it. This is football. Anything can happen. So don't be too strict and put too many rules on pricing, structure, and all that with your team. Be open-minded and available to all different ways of playing. Tip number 7, avoid team bias. We are all guilty of wanting to back the players for the teams we love. And also ignore our rivals as well. Yeah, getting a bit. But we also have quality bias towards certain teams as well. Forgetting that some teams can improve and change the way they play, and they're not always going to be the same, right? I would always say to try and avoid biases in your FPL team, and just go for who you actually think will score points if you remove the clubs. If this means captaining a player against your team, then oh well. You might not like it at the time, but if they end up scoring more points, then at the end of the season, you will like the points and you're much better overall rank from it anyway. And in like a week or two, you forget about them scoring, but you won't forget the FPL points. Oh, amazing. So what I would say is try and pretend you're a neutral when making FPL decisions, but then you can go back into the mindset of a fan during the game, right? If you have trouble separating them, just look at the football when the football is on, and then after a day or so, then look at FPL and think about that. And if you do that, you will make much better decisions, not be clouded by your thoughts and biases, and hopefully be better off on the other side. Tip number 8, make transfers as late as possible. Wait, I should clarify. I do not mean make transfers literally seconds before the deadline. And I also don't mean don't think about or have your transfers ready to make just before as well. I just mean don't make transfers halfway through a game week or just after it's ended. This is mainly because there's lots of teams in European competitions, there's midweek cups as well, and also training injuries can happen all throughout the season as well. And the last thing you want to do is transfer in a player on the weekend, and by the time the next game week comes, he's out injured. Now that would actually be a bit, So yes, you can plan your transfers, get it ready, see what you can do with your team, but I would suggest not actually confirming the transfer until a few hours or day before the deadline, and you'll be absolute golden. Tip number 9, use FPL tools. There's a bunch of amazing free tools out there that can do a variety of different things. These include comparing your team to a bunch of stats and models, suggesting changes for your team, analysing your transfers and captains to see if they actually give you a profit in points and how you've been doing, and many more. A lot of these could and probably can help you make sure you know what you're doing, and also see how you can improve your FPL brain and also improve your team throughout the season as well. All of that great stuff where if you just keep on trying to do these things, then eventually you will keep getting better. Tip number 10, and the final tip, understanding hindsight and outcome bias. And finally, the fancy topics which we all love. Both are actually quite similar, right? With outcome bias meaning you judge a decision based on the outcome rather than the factors that caused the outcome. And hindsight bias is being the knew it all along type mentality where you perceive the past was a lot more predictable than it actually was. Like for example, you might have doubled up on the Liverpool defence, right? And you think it's a great idea. Yeah, it is a great idea. But one might say it's a terrible idea after they go and concede in the first game, even though it was after the most dodgy red card and penalty you've ever seen in your life in football. Now that is what we call outcome bias. And another person might say they knew they were going to concede all along, even though they have the double defence themselves. They thought they could keep a clean sheet as well. Now that is what we call hindsight bias. Understanding these concepts is actually a lot more important than you think, as if you understand that not all the best decisions return FPL points straight away, and there are a lot of other factors that can happen, and anything will happen, because at the end of the day, this is football. You can then learn more about FPL decisions and make better decisions moving forward. Just because something went one way one time, it doesn't mean that's the worst or best way to go depending on the way it went. You need to properly understand, evaluate, and actually break down how players got points, how something actually happened, and the actual factors and facts behind it, and then you will be able to understand what you need to do to keep getting better players in FPL, rather than just saying, I knew that all along. No, you didn't. You're not going to improve if you keep doing that. So you can sum it up by saying, make sure you learn the right lessons, and that way you can keep on improving. And my number one tip is always to bring a spatula so you can spank people. This has been episode 9 of FPL School, talking about the best tips Bacon Boy has to become a better FPL manager. Make sure to check out the next video in the series, or you could get a bit of a spanking.
Don't be a cheeky scrub. Subscribe to Nathan Bacon right now. Don't let your memes be dreams.